Why do you do this? She asked, her voice trembling, tears pooling in her eyes. Why would you hurt people like this? His face twisted, a storm of emotions flickering in his eyes. You wouldn't understand, he replied, his voice raw. I was never given a choice. Amara shook her head, disbelief mingling with anger. We all have a choice. He looked away, the shadows swallowing his expression as he whispered, Not when you've sold your soul. For a moment, silence fell between them, thick with unspoken words. Amara realized that beneath his chilling facade was a man torn between his own demons and the remnants of his humanity. In that fleeting moment, she saw a chance to save not only herself but perhaps even him from the darkness that had consumed him. Let me help you, she said softly, her voice steady with an unexpected strength. There's a way out of this. There has to be. He looked at her, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. The grip of his hidden past wavered as he stared into her pleading eyes, and she could feel the faintest spark of hope flickering within him. But just as Amara thought she might have reached him, a distant sound shattered the moment. They both turned, the faint hum of an approaching car signaling that others were coming. Others who might not have the same fragile, hesitant heart she'd encountered in this haunted man. Amara's heart thundered in her chest as she heard the hum of the approaching car grow louder. She looked at him, a question burning in her eyes. Who's coming? His gaze shifted from her to the darkened path beyond, where the headlights slowly crept closer, illuminating the shadows in fractured flashes. His jaw clenched. People who'd do far worse than I have. Amara's mind raced, searching for an escape. Every fiber in her being told her to run, but her feet remained rooted to the spot, frozen between fear and a sliver of trust in this man's fractured soul. He turned to her, his voice low and urgent. You need to leave, now. But Amara shook her head, resolve hardening in her chest. I'm not going anywhere. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but the strength in it surprised even her. He stepped toward her, his hand reaching out in a sudden, uncharacteristic display of desperation. You don't understand. These people, they're not like me. They don't care about the dead, only the price that comes with it. They're here to collect. Amara swallowed hard, the gravity of his words sinking in. She'd been too close for too long, too close to his secrets, too close to his guarded heart. But she realized she'd also crossed an invisible line. She was no longer a mere spectator, but part of this twisted underworld. The car came to a halt, its engine rumbling ominously in the stillness. Two men stepped out, their silhouettes large and imposing, their movements precise and predatory. Amara felt a chill crawl down her spine as she watched them approach, their footsteps echoing against the hard pavement. They seemed to glide through the darkness, unfazed by the chill or the eerie silence that surrounded them. The man's face hardened. They don't know you're here. Keep quiet and maybe they won't notice. The men reached the doorway, their gazes sharp, dissecting. One of them was tall and wiry, his face a cruel mask of indifference. The other, stockier with piercing, hawk-like eyes, gave the man a curt nod. You've got what we came for? The tall man demanded, his voice slicing through the silence like a knife. The man glanced at Amara, the slightest hint of worry flickering in his eyes. Then he turned back to them, his voice colder than she'd ever heard. Yes, everything you asked for is here. The tall man took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. And what about the loose ends? We heard rumors. People talking. His gaze flicked past the man, momentarily resting on the corner where Amara hid. Amara held her breath, pressing herself against the wall, willing herself to disappear. She could feel their eyes scanning the darkness, each second more agonizing than the last. She knew if they found her, she wouldn't leave alive. The man stepped into the path of their gaze, blocking them, his stance stiff. Rumors are just that, he said, his tone calm, unbothered. Everything's been handled. The stocky man chuckled, a sinister grin curling on his lips. Hope you're right. You know what's at stake if you fail us? Without another word, the two men walked toward the hidden room deeper inside the building, leaving Amara and the man alone in the dim light. The tension between them was palpable as she held her breath, watching them disappear into the shadows. She felt his hand grab her wrist, his touch rough but oddly reassuring. He pulled her back into the alley, away from the prying eyes and curious ears. "You need to get as far away from here as possible," he whispered, his voice low but intense. Amara pulled her wrist free, defiance sparking in her eyes, not without knowing the truth. He looked at her, a battle waging within him. Finally, his shoulders slumped and he let out a shaky breath. "I do it because I owe them. It's a debt I can never repay, a life I was forced into long ago." She didn't flinch, only waited, letting the silence stretch as he hesitated, caught between the need for secrecy and the desire to unburden himself. "They own me, Amara," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "They took everything from me, my freedom, my family, and in return, they gave me one choice: obey or die." Amara's heart twisted with horror, her mind whirling with questions. She'd spent days feeling pity, even sympathy for him, but now, faced with the cold truth, she felt a pang of empathy she hadn't expected. "So you're a prisoner too," she murmured, understanding dawning in her eyes. He didn't respond, only looked away, his silence confirming her suspicion. She reached out, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "There has to be a way out of this. If you want it enough, we can find it." He looked at her, his eyes hollow and filled with a lifetime of pain. "This isn't a story with a happy ending, Amara. Once you're in, there's no escape." But Amara refused to accept that. She knew there was more at stake than just his life or hers. If she could free him, she could stop this cycle, protect the lives of those targeted by this sinister network. "We'll find a way," she insisted, her voice trembling but fierce. "Together." For a moment, he seemed to believe her. But then footsteps echoed behind them, closer than before. The men were returning. Without thinking, he grabbed her, pulling her into a narrow passage between the buildings. They held their breath as the men's voices grew louder, the cold weight of danger pressing down on them. The stocky man's voice drifted through the stillness, dark with a hint of amusement. "I wonder if he's really up for the job. Maybe we should keep a closer eye on him." "Doesn't matter," the tall man replied dismissively. "Once he's no longer useful, we'll dispose of him, just like the rest." Amara felt the man tense beside her, the threat clear as a dagger to his throat. She turned, her hand finding his, her grip firm and unwavering. She met his gaze, her determination unbreakable. "They won't get the chance," she whispered, a quiet fire igniting in her eyes. But in her heart, she knew the path ahead was treacherous, fraught with risk. They had no allies, no safety, and no certainty of escape. Yet, as she looked into his haunted eyes, she realized that the cost of not trying was too great. The darkness around them thickened, the danger looming like a shadow that clung to their every step. The men's voices faded as they moved deeper into the building, and Amara knew their chance had come. She squeezed his hand, giving him a slight nod. "Are you with me?" He hesitated, but the fear in his eyes slowly gave way to something she hadn't seen before: hope. He gave a reluctant nod, and together they slipped away into the night, their footsteps swallowed by the silence. They would need courage, cunning, and luck to escape the fate that awaited them. But with every step, Amara felt her resolve solidify. She had no idea where this journey would lead or what dangers lay ahead. All she knew was that they had each other and a shared determination to break free from the chains that bound them. In that moment, she vowed that whatever it took, whatever price she had to pay, she would bring down the men who thrived in the shadows. And with him by her side, she would expose the horrors lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly quiet town, even if it meant risking everything she held dear. The mad white man's story is rooted in manipulation, survival, and loss. Years ago, he was a skilled surgeon, known for his brilliance in medical research. But his talents drew the attention of a secret network within the government, powerful men who profited from illegal organ trading. When he refused to take part, they exploited a devastating weakness: his family. Under threats to his wife and daughter, he was given an ultimatum: comply or lose them forever. To protect his loved ones, he faked his own madness, disappearing into the shadows as the Mad White Man. It was a convincing disguise, one that allowed him to navigate society without suspicion. Feigning mental instability enabled him to work undetected, while his real identity, a surgeon turned pawn, was lost in the madness. Over the years, he complied, hating himself for every person he harmed. The guilt weighed heavily, tearing at his conscience, yet the network's grip on him was ironclad. His handlers made it clear: one misstep, and his family would pay the price. He distanced himself from others, hardened by shame and survival instincts, believing that there was no way out of this dark underworld. Amara's arrival was the first act of kindness he'd experienced in years. Her patience, her warmth, her courage, they slowly cracked his steely resolve, making him wish he could be free from the chains that bound him. She became his lifeline, a reminder of the humanity he had long buried. With her arrival, the guilt and desire for redemption began to outweigh his fear, and he finally resolved to seek a way out, not just for himself, but to stop the horrors that haunted him. After uncovering the truth, Amara set a calculated plan into motion. Realizing that direct confrontation would be futile, she carefully gathered evidence, including documents and photos from the man's private notes. She documented the network's every move, tracking the officials' payments, the hidden locations, and even some of their faces. Each night, she inched closer to the truth, risking her life to collect undeniable proof. When she had enough evidence, she leveraged social media, anonymously releasing incriminating snippets of information to trusted journalists and activists. The revelations spread like wildfire, forcing the network into the public eye. She even managed to reach a whistleblower within the government, a junior official who had once been a victim of the network's manipulation. With this whistleblower's help, she secured more documents and records, providing the hard proof needed to take down the entire ring. The pressure mounted and public outrage erupted. Massive protests swept through the city, demanding justice for the victims. News outlets, both local and international, covered the story, exposing the officials' corruption and exploitation. With mounting public pressure and undeniable evidence, the authorities were forced to intervene, launching an investigation that ultimately led to the arrest of the network's leaders. The white man, no longer bound by fear, testified against the officials, detailing his years of coercion and forced crimes. Amara's courage and persistence brought long overdue justice to the victims. Her actions not only toppled a powerful network, but also gave the man a second chance at life, free from the darkness that had consumed him. Though their journey was fraught with danger, her unrelenting dedication and tactical brilliance turned the tide, ensuring that the powerful men in the shadows finally paid the price for their crimes.